Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. A big video for you this morning. Anthony Power and I are going to be dissecting fiscal year 25 and Q4 results from none other than IREN, which happens to be hitting new all-time highs in excess of $29 per share on the backs of last night's earnings. We of course have Daniel Roberts coming on the podcast for our exclusive Q&A or earnings interview this afternoon. That one's going to be going out tonight. A lot to talk about, all green, all iron, all day on power mining analysis. Hit the like button, feel free to subscribe, and with that being said, let's get into today's video. All right, guys, away we go. A double header for you today. Both videos focused on none other than IREN. They just came out with their Q4 fiscal year 2025 results last night. Anthony, I don't think I've been this excited to listen to an earnings call in quite some time. You and I both jumped on the call. Fantastic communication video call. Nice to see, in contrast to some of the other earnings calls we've seen recently. We're going to get into the numbers in a second here. Before we do, though, Bitcoin itself floundering today, now down in the 108 region. The Bitcoin miners following suit, albeit IREN and Cypher slightly bucking the trend.
Yeah, Bitcoin's down today, it's just doing its normal thing, a bit of volatility. The mining stocks are obviously impacted by Bitcoin price, but as you rightly say, IREN's having a day because of the fantastic earnings it released early this morning, and we'll cover that in a second. All-time high achieved in share price, $29.50, I think was the all-time high. Obviously pulled back a little bit from then because obviously Bitcoin price has come down, but it's an expectation that this share is going to continue to rally if we get more good news on the Bitcoin price going forward. But an excellent earnings update, and we'll cover it in more detail.
Yeah, we certainly will. Now, I wanted to talk about market cap as well, but before we do, of course, a quick reminder, we've got Daniel Roberts on himself, the co-CEO of IREN, this afternoon, scheduled for around 4 p.m. Mountain Time. So the interview itself will be out towards dinner time this evening. We just wanted everyone to be aware of the timelines there. Now, because of this big rally we've seen in earnings, obviously a big impact to share price and in turn market cap for IREN. You can see market cap at the time this was taken in excess of $7 billion, Anthony. This is a company, when you started covering them at half an exahash, I was looking back just a few months, you could have got shares of IREN in the $5 range just of April of this year. The company has truly hit an inflection point. We've been talking on the channel about this re-rating, and it appears IREN has now solidified itself as a real HPC AI data center player.
Yeah, I mean, literally 3 months ago, the share price was just over $5. And I know I picked up a few at that sort of, in that $5 range there to add to my holdings. And you can see from the chart there, we've got the year-to-date, month, 5-day, and the actual days increase. And as we said, only IREN and Cypher are showing green as at today. And they're the only two miners that are showing green in every period from year-to-date. But look at the year-to-date for IREN there, 170%. No one's coming anywhere near that. TeraWulf up at 63%, but we know they've signed a couple of deals in the HPC space, so they've had a really good run. Their share price over $9. But yeah, and then you look at the other end of the scale there, you've got CleanSpark. I mean, this table's in order of market capitalization. CleanSpark's dropped. Last year it was vying with Mara to be the biggest mining company from market capitalization back in March last year when the share price was $24, $25. It's a different factor now. It's hovering over $9. Market capitalization has dropped, by a couple of $1 billion at least in that period there. It was close to $5 billion. And, effectively now, ninth in terms of size from market capitalization and having a bit of a poor start. We know that the CEO left for personal reasons. Matt Schultz has jumped back in the chair, but we've not heard anything really with regards to any sort of like effectively new strategy, although they're saying that they'll use power whichever the best ROI is. So, that looks like, they might be looking at like what every other miner's looking at. And HPC's the way. But it's a challenging time for them, and I'm sure there's a lot of disappointed shareholders out there.
Yeah, I'm sure there are as well. And it's really a tale of two different strategies here. Both companies, 50 exahash Bitcoin mining, completely different strategy in terms of how they hodl, what they use the money for, their future growth plans. And you got to think if CleanSpark was sooner out of the gate here, they could have been in the contention for the stronghold sites with Bitfarms, or potentially had picked up some of these larger facilities, larger sites over the year. But again, looking for an update on that strategy here from Matt Schultz and team. However, the main event today, of course, is IREN. They're on top in the Bitcoin mining sector, and it really felt to me this was the watershed moment. IREN making it out of the small leagues into the big leagues, really cementing themselves in that upper echelon of cloud service providers or cloud AI providers. And we're going to talk about that throughout today's presentation. Before we get into the GPU growth, the AI, the HPC, we did want to go through the numbers themselves. This was a record quarter, record year for IREN across many different metrics. So Anthony, maybe you can walk us through some of the high level numbers, then we'll get into the strategy and growth.
Yeah, and bear in mind, this was their full year results. So these numbers will be for the last 12 months, and they're impressive to say the least. You look at the revenue itself, $500 million of revenue. The majority of that obviously coming from Bitcoin mining. I mean, they've managed to achieve, 50 exahash on time, and their target. And believe you me, you go back a year ago when the hash rate was 10 exahash, and they said instead of getting to 20 by the end of the year, get to 30, and then to get to 50 6 months later. Few people were scratching their heads thinking that's an ambitious target, but they achieved both of them, and have delivered. And their first month with 50 exahash, they literally broke every metric available during the month. And July was a phenomenal month, and let's see how August fares as well. But adjusted EBITDA, 270 million. That's an increase of nearly 400% on the previous year. EBITDA itself, which, earnings before interest, taxation, depreciation, amortization, 278 million. And that's an increase of 1,344% on the previous year. And net income, let's highlight the fact that really, I don't think there's another miner. I saw Asher Ganut at the Bitcoin conference in Asia. He suggested that Hut are actually able to produce a profit, including depreciation, stock compensation. We'll have a look through those figures soon and determine that. But there's not many miners, maybe just the two of them. And we've covered pretty much most of the big miners on the channel in the last sort of 4 weeks. And if you take away the FASB rules, which is a non-cash appreciation of the value of Bitcoin, and just look at the mining metrics, pretty much all of them were in the red. DMG were quite close. They were only just under 400,000 in the red. That was as close as it got. But IREN, 87 million for the year, which is 116 million up on the previous year. They made an overall net loss in 2024, but 87 million in 2025. Now they've got the 50 exahash. Now they've got this increase in GPUs. They're now forecasting 10.9 thousand GPUs at the Prince George site in Canada, and potential to grow that to 20,000 GPUs in short term as well. In terms of the contracted power, again, it's up another 750 megawatts since the previous year, now showing 2.9 gigawatts of power and operating currently at 810 megawatts. That's an increase of 550 in the year. So, we talked about that increase of hash rate from 10 to 50 exahash. That's where the power's coming there, plus the fact they're also increasing their HPC strategy. So an overall, a really, really strong year. And let's give them credit. They did warn us about this. They said they'd bring out some good numbers, and they did.
Yeah, they certainly did. And we're looking forward to talking more about those numbers with Dan tonight. Specifically, one question around NYDIG and how that fits into the financials as well. But you brought up a very interesting number there, Anthony. You said the Bitcoin mining business now on track for around $1 billion per year. The HPC, just based on this expansion you mentioned, the 10,000 plus GPUs, that's in the neighborhood of about 200 to 250 million. That's very close to the number you had projected last week prior on that prior announcement. combined here, you can see they are forecasting annualized revenue in the neighborhood of around $1.25 billion. So this is really what's starting to turn people's heads. And as you start to extrapolate, think, okay, well, they could go to 20,000 GPUs. They could go up to 60,000 in Canada. They have space for 600,000 at Sweetwater. You start to do the math here in combination with some of the financing strategies IREN now has, and the numbers get quite mind-boggling quite fast. So you look at some of the existing operations. We've talked about them pausing the Bitcoin mining. My question for you here, Anthony, we were almost critical of IREN last year in the fact that they didn't hodl. They continued to sell. They continued to use this Bitcoin to finance the data center growth. The terminology that Dan used is we're bootstrapping our business with Bitcoin mining to build out our data center capacity. Looking back now, based on the last 12 months worth of earnings, it appears this strategy really hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, they have. And another thing to highlight from a balance sheet perspective, yes, they've took on a sizable amount of debt in terms of the convertible notes they've took out this year, nearly $1 billion worth. But even if you take that into account their net assets from 2024 to 2025 have increased by nearly $1 billion. That's a phenomenal feat. Especially when you're taking on debt to grow as well. So actually what it tells you is every pound they're spending in debt, they're growing significant amounts with it in the company. And they've also put a chart in there because obviously the Bitcoin price is volatile. They've even done a sensitivity chart to show you at the current price, that they'd expect an earnings of about $1 billion at approximately the current price of Bitcoin, this week, around about $115,000, and showing it what it looks like at $125,000, $150,000, and $200,000. Because the expectation from some of the big analysts really think that by the end of the year we could see, more all-time highs and a significant pump in the Bitcoin price. Time will tell, but they've put those numbers in there to show you what it looks like. Now, one thing that IREN can do better than most of the miners is they can produce Bitcoin really cheaply because two reasons. One, their average cost of electricity during that last quarter was 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. That's as low as it gets when you're talking miners. And they have the most efficient fleet. So they cover two of the things that you require to get a good return. Their total cash cost to mine a Bitcoin, according to their updates, is $37,000. Now, even if you look at the Bitcoin price today and it's dropped, down to the 108, 109,000 range. If you're mining at $37,000, you've got a healthy margin there to help grow your other business, because the cash flow that they're raising from this by selling the Bitcoin, as you rightly said, they're not hodling, they're selling the Bitcoin, they're growing a HPC strategy. And that HPC strategy, once these 10,900 miners are all switched on, that can deliver annualized revenue of 250 million as well. And it doesn't stop there. Like you say, they're going to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, great segue really to the next slide here, talking about how IREN is positioning themselves for this insatiable AI infrastructure demand. You can see the bar chart in the bottom showing the growth trajectory out until the second half of 2027 when they eventually energize Sweetwater. What's interesting though, and a real focal point of the call, was the assets they have here in Canada. So not only the Prince George facility, which we've talked a lot about, they also have an 80 megawatt facility in Mackenzie, BC, just up the valley, and a 30 megawatt facility south in Canal Flats. It sounds like, based on the success they're seeing in Prince George, they've obviously committed to new GPUs there. They've got a roadmap to ramp to 20,000, actually starting construction on some of those buildings. Dan also said on the call they're using the exact same building design. They're going to replicate that at these two other British Columbia facilities. And in theory, that could get them up to 60,000 B300 GPUs in British Columbia alone. So not only does this have a big impact on revenue, you got to think when they're around the negotiation table with these hyperscalers, having that kind of credential or experience under your belt obviously bodes extremely well. The other question that was brought up, do they even need a hyperscaler at this point? And is colocation or selling colo space really the best use of funds? For me, the thing that resonated is IREN is truly in the driver's seat. They've got a ton of power, a ton of experience, and really a ton of options to help monetize this business moving forward.
Yeah, they have, and they're already sort of like operating as sort of like a neo cloud company now in terms of what they're doing in British Columbia. And if they keep ramping that up there, like you say, that revenue goes to, from where it was in June at $26 million all the way up to 200 to $250 million. I mean, obviously, we're talking about an on-demand service. An on-demand service will require utilization. But again, from the call, what they're hearing is with these latest machines, that the Blackwell machines that they're installing, they're getting signed contracts for a significant number of years. Some cases 3 years, in some cases actually more than 3 years. And that was literally as soon as the machine started to be ordered and go in there. Clients were coming in there, and it looks like, if they can do this and attract that level of clients and customer in Canada there, maybe they think actually we can replicate this at Childress with Horizon 1. They're already now talking about building Horizon 2, another 50 megawatt facility. And then you think about the power at Childress, and you then realize, have they got enough power to build Horizon 2 when you require an amount of supplementary power to help power the high performance compute as well? And Dan said he's prepared to move some of the miners from there to Sweetwater if it means getting best money for your investment at Childress. So he's quite happy. And if you remember from the last call we had with him, he did say if the ROIs are good for HPC, the company will make the decision to use the ROI as the driving force. And he was very bullish on the HPC there. And he has to, it has to be because the Bitcoin mining business is bringing in significant amounts of cash flow for him. So, he's not going to give that up easily, but it sounds like the revenues that he can receive from HPC are far significant. And it's all about power. It's not about Bitcoin mining. It's not about HPC. It's about power and return on power now. And that's going to be the main driver.
Yeah, it certainly is. Two other key things that came up on the earnings call I wanted to quickly touch on. Rack density was one of them. We actually had a few questions from the subscriber base talking about the fact that IREN is building 200 kilowatt rack density in Childress at the Horizon 1 facility. However, some of the new NVIDIA chips go up to 500. We had a few questions about this. Dan actually said, based on what the market's telling them right now, they've had to lower the rack density requirements at a lot of these sites or clusters just because the industry hasn't quite caught up yet. So it seems or appears they really are quite on the cutting edge of infrastructure development. The other thing that came up, and Franz Baker, credit to you for calling this out, the NVIDIA preferred status. Essentially what this means, if you go over to the NVIDIA website, you can see they're directly referring their clients to IREN in Canada. So this is a huge feather in their cap. Obviously helps out with the financing side of things as well. We heard that they've essentially got 100% GPU financing in the high single digit range. So again, a lot of optionality here and a great roadmap ahead for IREN.
Yeah, absolutely. It just seems everything at the moment they touch is they seem to have the Midas touch. It seems to be turning to gold. And, the other thing that's obviously came out before earnings was the fact that the settlement with NYDIG as well has took that distraction off the table as well. So obviously that's an undisclosed settlement. So we're not here to start picking into that there. But that was something that was overhanging now for probably 2 to 3 years. If you remember when they defaulted on the actual loan payments through the special purpose vehicles. Back in the day when they'd ordered all those machines and the machines were held as collateral. But that seems to have now been agreed. It's a distraction out the window now, so they can now fully focus on what they're trying to do, and that's drive this strategy to achieve the best return on power.
Yeah, honestly, Anthony, this was a very exciting earnings call for me. Everything they mentioned seems, as you say, to be turning to gold or that Midas touch. We talked about the BC assets, the growth there, the cloud AI business model. They've got Childress 1. You talked about Childress 2 now starting to come online with that direct liquid to chip cooling, which is again industry leading in the space. They've got the Sweetwater hub in Texas. We're going to actually be down there touring some of the Texas facilities in just a few months' time. So in closing here, as we start to look at the future growth prospects for IREN, I know Mike Alfred has said this company has a path to $100 billion, but in my head, the differences between IREN and a company like CoreWeave, for example, are starting to get smaller and smaller. So we obviously are looking very forward to having Dan on this afternoon to help fill in the blanks here in some additional context. But overall, Anthony, I'd rate this an A+.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Teacher's pet this year in terms of all the results coming out there. And it looks like they're not stopping. They're going after the best returns. And it's quite interesting. I mean, you know what my view, has always been sort of like the co-location is less risky, less. I mean, we're talking GPUs, significant amount of funding required to deliver that. And if they're going to do that at the Sweetwater site and the Childress site, you're talking, tens of billions of dollars in terms of infrastructure and in terms of GPUs. Now, yes, they have got some really good rates for leasing or for buying GPUs, whichever strategy they use to do that. So at the moment, I think they've got a 3-year lease agreement on some of these GPUs coming through into Prince George. And yes, they may be able to get further funding. Anthony was very clear on the update and the earnings call that there was significant availability of loans for HPC services, not in the same way for Bitcoin mining, but for HPC, the market does look at this differently, and he's been able to, get lower cost of capital across the board. But when you're talking about 200, 300 million, and then suggesting that, we can mirror that out up to $10 billion, $20 billion, because that's the sort of money that CoreWeave are spending this year. How are you going to do that? You've got a number of levers. You can sell more shares. And they did sell some shares during the period there. They've now got 272 million shares, approximately, just slightly less than that, 272 million shares in issue at the moment. That's increased from the previous quarter, but still less than the majority of their peer miners. I think CleanSpark's 280 million, and Mara and Riot Platforms well over 300 million shares in issue. So they've managed to grow that there. They've sold the Bitcoin, but let's end on the fact that they are now the largest Bitcoin miner by market capitalization by some significant amount. And today was a changing of the guard.
Yeah, it certainly was. So congratulations to everyone holding IREN. Make sure you guys smash the like button if you made some money today on the Green Queen. Again, looking forward to the interview tonight. Let us know if you guys have any additional questions in the comment section below. Feel free to hit the like button, subscribe. We'll see you back here in a few hours.